Joining us again at our table this morning is Congressman Tom McClintock, Republican of California, member of the Budget Committee and Judiciary. Thank you, sir, for being here. Let's start with the budget because tis the season. Where are we in the budget process? Give us an overview for our viewers. Explain what needs to happen in these coming weeks and months.
We were very late. The budget was supposed to be produced on April 15th. It was delayed because the administration delayed its numbers to us. My understanding is there is a plan to take up the budget in committee within the next few weeks. It will balance within 10 years, I think, because of some rather unrealistic revenue growth assumptions, but we'll see. The reforms in it, if enacted, I think would affect that growth rate. But as you know, the chances of getting serious reforms enacted, given the split between Democrats and Republicans in the House and the Senate, a little bit more sketchy.
You're talking about a Republican proposal because Republicans control the House. So when the House Budget Committee, run by Republicans, takes up its proposal, this is what you're looking at.
Correct. Yeah, and the other question is just how serious are the Republicans? Just last night, they rejected an amendment that I had offered to get rid of the least essential program in the entire federal budget. They call it Essential Air Service. That's the program that spends about $1/3 billion a year of your money to fly empty and near empty planes from rural airports to regional hubs, even though those regional hubs are often less than an hour's drive away. It's a pet project for individual members. It was rejected on a bipartisan vote yesterday, so I can't tell you the Congress is serious about cutting spending yet.
Is that a rural versus urban issue?
I think it's a spending on various constituencies. When you're getting up to $1,000 per ticket subsidy, as an airline, you're quite happy with that. And one of the things that they keep telling us is, well, this helps rural communities. Well, yeah, when you pour billions of dollars, in this case hundreds of millions of dollars, into rural communities, they're going to do very well, but the rest of the country does very poorly by exactly the same measure. I happen to have such an airport very close to my district in Merced. It's about a 45-minute drive to Fresno Regional Airport that's got flights all over the western United States.
Okay, so that's the FAA reauthorization that's being debated right now.
But I view that as a test as to whether the Congress has yet summoned the will to actually start restraining spending, and I've got to tell you, once again, it failed that test.
All right, so when the House Budget Committee takes up the overall budget for this year, explain what is that versus the 12 appropriations bills that have to make their way through Congress to fund federal agencies.
The budget resolution, which actually does not go to the president, is simply a spending plan. It establishes overall parameters for spending levels. The way it has worked most of the time is not the way it was designed to work. Usually the budget resolution is simply ignored, and we go ahead and appropriate the money anyway through those 12 appropriations bills, or more recently through continuing resolutions that keep kicking the can down the road. But the way it's supposed to work.
Well, let me just jump in, though, real quick. So just to crystallize this, so are you saying appropriators don't listen to what the Budget Committee says?
When the budget actually is passed, they do listen. If it's not passed, they usually go on the basis of past spending. We continue. Many of the programs that appropriators send money to, their authorizations have lapsed years, sometimes decades ago. They've never been reauthorized, and yet we keep shoveling money at them anyway, even though there's a rule in the House that's been there since the 1830s that says you cannot appropriate money except for authorized purposes. Well, anyway, getting back to the way the budget process is supposed to work, the House is supposed to pass a budget, and the Senate is supposed to pass a budget. Again, setting overall parameters for all spending. If that budget is agreed to by both houses, well, then it unlocks some very powerful tools for bringing spending back under control. Each of the committees of jurisdiction is set instructions. This is what you have to set spending levels at, which means they've got to then produce changes in law. And we're talking about the mandatory spending side right now, which has been the most difficult to cut, so been the one that's been the most growth. They have to send specific reforms to the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee drops those into a reconciliation bill, and that reconciliation bill gets expedited consideration in the Senate, so it's a simple majority vote in the Senate, simple majority vote in the House. If that bill is then signed by the president, you now have a lid on spending. But I've been here 15 years, and it's never been used the way it was designed.
Where are we in the appropriations process right now? What are the deadlines looming for this Congress?
Gosh, I don't know the exact deadlines that are coming up. I mean, obviously, we have to have spending bills in place by the end of the fiscal year on September 30th. I know that the appropriations committees are meeting right now, even in the absence of a budget, and setting spending levels. I don't know what the exact deadline is for them to complete their work.
So what if the Congress does not pass 12 separate spending bills? Then what happens? Well,
then we go to a continuing resolution of one kind or another and simply kick the can further down the road. That would be a terrible tragedy given the historic levels of debt that we've now incurred and the implications that has to the future of the country.
So then if you have continuing resolutions to keep the government open and running, what happens then if you can't? You run out of time to pass 12 appropriations bills.
Then you end up with the kind of government shutdowns that we've seen from time to time, where the government can no longer operate. If the administration wants to make life easier for people, there's not much disruption in a person's life. If the administration wants to make it difficult for people, as the Obama administration did, well, that's when you see the barricades around the National Mall, and you see all the national parks closed, and you see a lot of very, very painful things. That's used as a political tool, and that's unfortunate because it hurts a lot of people. But either way, you've got to appropriate funds for the coming year, and until you do, the government does not have the legal authority to spend that money.
What is an omnibus, and is that likely this year?
Well, an omnibus is simply a collection of various appropriations bills, and I think I can't tell the future, and I'm still hopeful that we'll see all 12 appropriations bills pass. But given the vote we saw last night that I just discussed, I'm not sure I'm optimistic about it at this point.
And quickly, before we get to calls, how do you think this all shakes out, given the deal that was struck between Speaker Kevin McCarthy and the president, and conservatives in the House who do not like what the Speaker negotiated?
Well,
spending levels.
We got a pretty good bill out of the House and Senate law, the Fiscal Responsibility Act. That did bend spending trajectories down by several $1 trillion over a decade. I would hope we would see that kind of coalition reemerge in the final product. But again, I'm not overly optimistic.